All right, everyone, strap in, because today we are diving deep into the wild world of AI-assisted coding. And to help us navigate this crazy landscape, we've got a fascinating conversation with the creators of Cursor. It's this code editor built on VS Code, but with a seriously heavy dose of AI magic sprinkled in.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting about Cursor? It's not just about, like AI generating code snippets here and there. It's like they're trying to build an AI that anticipates your next move as a programmer and just makes the whole coding experience way more fluid and intuitive.
Yeah, I mean, these guys come from the hardcore Vim world, right? Like the kind of programmers who think using a mouse is like a capital offense.
Yeah.
But even they got lured in by the siren song of AI in VS Code.
It's funny how they talk about this whole scaling laws thing in the podcast. Like they actually had an office bet going on about whether AI would be able to win gold at the International Math Olympiad.
Quite seriously.
Yeah, and even they were surprised by how quickly AI ended up acing that test, which kind of shows you how much they understood the potential of these massive AI models.
Oh, I'm a little confused here. So these are the guys building an AI code editor, and they're surprised by how fast AI is progressing. It's like a chef being shocked that fire makes things hot.
I think it was more about the pace of the progress, like they predicted AI would eventually get there, but the speed at which it happened was kind of a wake-up call. It showed them that AI wasn't just some cool tech demo anymore. It was about to turn the whole software development world upside down.
Ah, okay, that makes more sense. So that's where Cursor was born. From the ashes of their shattered expectations rose this phoenix of an AI-powered code editor. But okay, let's get real for a second. The thing that really caught my eye was this tab feature they kept raving about. It's like you hit tab, and the editor just magically predicts like the next chunk of code you're about to write. It sounds like straight up science fiction.
It's a bold claim for sure. They talk about it as eliminating all the low entropy actions in coding, basically all the repetitive grunt work that makes you want to bang your head against the keyboard. They want the AI to take care of all that.
Yeah, they mentioned this internal competition they had, like some kind of weird coding game. It was like, how many tabs can we make someone press before they realize they're practically useless?
Yeah.
It's like they're obsessed with making coding so intuitive that it's like the AI is reading your mind.
Maybe even controlling it.
Okay, now that is getting a little crazy.
But to pull this off, they're using this whole cocktail of cutting-edge AI techniques. We're talking mixture of experts models, speculative decoding, caching, like their lives depend on it. They even have specialized models just for applying the AI suggestions to your code, which is apparently way harder than it sounds.
Okay, whoa. Time out for a second. You got to break this down for us mere mortals. Mixture of experts models. That sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi movie.
Imagine you're building a house right. You wouldn't hire just one general contractor, would you? You'd have plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all these specialized experts.
No.
Mixture of experts models are kind of like that. They break down complex tasks into smaller pieces, and then they use specialized AI experts for each part.
So it's like an AI construction crew for your code.
Exactly.
I can dig it. But I gotta say, even with all this fancy AI, throwing a ton of code changes at a programmer all at once, that's got to be overwhelming, right? Like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, for sure. They actually talk about that challenge a lot in the conversation. Figuring out how to represent these large-scale code edits visually is a huge hurdle. They've been experimenting with different interface designs, trying to find that sweet spot between showing you the AI suggestions and not making you feel like you're drowning in information.
Right. They mentioned something about a dynamic diff interface.
Exactly. It's all about guiding the programmer's attention to the most relevant parts of the code and showing how the changes kind of ripple through the whole project.
Okay, that's actually pretty cool. So I guess that wraps up Act 1 of our Cursor deep dive. We've met the mad scientists behind it, got a sneak peek into their AI-powered crystal ball, and glimpsed the sorcery of this tab feature. But hold on tight, because things are about to get really wild. Up next, we're going to crack open the hood of this beast and see what's really powering it. We're talking the models, the benchmarks, and how the heck they're scaling this thing up to handle all the code-hungry programmers out there. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive into AI-assisted coding with Cursor.
So in Act 1, we got the origin story of Cursor and a glimpse of this tab feature, which honestly still sounds like something out of a cyberpunk fever dream. But now let's pop the hood and see what's really powering this beast. What kind of AI voodoo are we talking about here?
Well, one thing that really stood out from the Cursor team's conversation is that they're not just throwing any old AI at the problem. They're using this carefully curated ensemble of custom-trained models, along with some of the most powerful frontier models out there.
Hold on, frontier models. Sounds like something a cowboy would say. Are we talking about AI that's like riding into the sunset and shooting bugs in the face?
Not quite. Frontier models are basically the most advanced AI models available, like the bleeding edge of what's possible. They're huge, complex, and incredibly powerful, but they also require a lot of expertise to use effectively.
So it's not as simple as just grabbing the biggest, baddest AI off the shelf and saying, go code me $1 million app.
Definitely not. They even mentioned how something as seemingly simple as applying an AI-suggested edit to your code can be surprisingly tricky. They actually had to train a separate model just for that.
Seriously, a whole separate model just for hitting Schritt rel plus V. These guys are making rocket science look like child's play.
Well, remember, we're talking about AI that's understanding code at a really deep level. It needs to know how to integrate changes, seamlessly avoid introducing new bugs, and maintain the overall structure of the code base.
Okay, that makes sense. But it brings up another question. How do they even measure if these AI models are any good? Is there like some kind of AI Olympics where these bots compete in a coding deathmatch?
That would be pretty entertaining. But the reality is a bit more complicated. The Cursor team actually pointed out that a lot of existing benchmarks for AI coding are pretty lame. They're too focused on like simple, well-defined problems, while real-world coding is this tangled mess of ambiguity, context, and let's face it, programmer ego.
So how do they know if their AI is actually writing decent code? Do they just lock a bunch of interns in a room and make them read AI-generated code until their eyes bleed?
Well, they did emphasize the importance of human benchmarks and getting feedback from real programmers who are actually using Cursor, but they also run their own internal evaluations that are more tailored to the specific challenges of AI-assisted coding.
Right, fair enough. But let's talk scalability for a second.
Yeah.
Cursor is exploding in popularity, right?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the server meltdowns they must be having with all these code-hungry programmers hammering their AI.
Scaling is definitely a huge challenge. One of the key issues they highlighted is indexing massive code bases for search and retrieval. We're talking about mountains of data, and the AI needs to be able to find the right needle in that haystack quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, I can see how that would give their servers a migraine. Did they mention any solutions they're using? Are they building some kind of AI-powered supercomputer out of old Raspberry Pis and duct tape?
Not quite that DIY, but they did talk about some pretty clever strategies. One that stood out was their use of Merkle trees for efficient code-based reconciliation.
Hold up, Merkle trees. Is that some kind of mystical forest where AI code sprites frolic amongst the leagues?
It does sound a bit whimsical, but it's actually a really clever data structure. Think of it like a super efficient way to track changes in a code base. It allows them to quickly see what's changed without having to re-index everything from scratch.
So instead of combing through every line of code, they're basically taking a snapshot of the entire forest and comparing it to the previous snapshot.
Exactly. It's all about optimizing for performance and scalability. They also talked about techniques like caching and minimizing the number of times they have to re-embed code, which is a computationally expensive process.
Okay, so Act 2 is in the books. And we've survived the technical jargon jungle. We've seen the AI model menagerie, the benchmarking battleground, and the scalability showdown. But the real question remains, what does this all mean for the future of programming? Are we about to witness the rise of the coder bots, leaving us puny humans jobless and obsolete? Buckle up, because in Act 3, we're going to dive into the philosophical deep end. Okay, so we've seen the origin story, we've poked around under the hood, but now for the million-dollar question, is AI about to turn us all into code-writing dinosaurs, or are we going to be sitting on our porches yelling at those darn robot programmers to get off our lawns?
Well, the Cursor team actually pushed back on that whole agents are taking over narrative. They seem pretty excited about using agents for like very specific tasks like squashing bugs or setting up those annoying development environments.
Yeah, they talked about this one bug where you couldn't copy-paste into the chat input box. It was driving them nuts. And their dream is to basically just chuck that problem at an AI agent and have it come back with a solution the next day, like some kind of digital janitor.
That's a great example of where agents could really shine, taking care of those tedious, repetitive tasks that nobody wants to do. But they were also clear that a huge part of programming is about like Iterating, experimenting, feeling your way through the code until you find what works, and that's where humans still have the edge.
So it's not like we can just hand AI a wish list and say, go build me the next Facebook.
Right. A lot of the magic in programming comes from that back and forth, from trying things out, making mistakes, refining your ideas along the way. It's not just about writing lines of code. It's about solving problems creatively, and that's something AI isn't quite ready to replicate.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
But what about letting AI actually modify code or mess with databases? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
What if the AI decides to go rogue and drain my bank account?
It's definitely something to think about. The Cursor team talked about the importance of security and sandboxing, basically putting limits on what the AI can do. It's like giving a toddler a pair of safety scissors. You want them to be able to explore and create, but not chop off their fingers.
Makes sense. But they also painted this picture of the future where programmers can basically choose how deep they want to go into the code. Like, they can write in pseudocode, which is basically code for dummies, and the AI translates it into the real deal. Or they can, like, point at a chunk of code and have the AI explain what the heck is going on. Sounds pretty mind-blowing to me.
It's like having an AI interpreter that speaks both human and computer languages, and that really highlights their whole philosophy of giving programmers more control and flexibility. They're not trying to replace programmers, they're trying to give them superpowers.
So for all you newbie coders out there sweating bullets that AI is going to steal your jobs, the Cursor team actually has a pretty optimistic message. AI is going to make coding more fun and engaging by taking care of all the boring stuff.
Exactly. They said that coding today is already way more fun than it was just a few years ago, and AI is only going to accelerate that trend. It's going to free us up to focus on the creative, challenging aspects of programming, the stuff that makes us feel like digital wizards.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our Cursor deep dives. We've explored the origins, the technology, and the mind-bending possibilities of this game-changing code editor. What stood out to you the most in this journey?
For me, it's the sheer ambition of the Cursor team. They're not just building another tool. They're trying to redefine what it means to be a programmer in the age of AI, and that's incredibly exciting. But it also raises some important questions. If AI can handle all the low-entropy coding, what new possibilities will open up for software development? What incredible new applications will we create when our minds are free to tackle the truly challenging problems?
It's a future full of possibilities and a little bit terrifying, to be honest. But as always, the best way to face the unknown is to stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and join us next time for another deep dive into the ever-evolving world of tech and innovation. Until then, happy coding.
Oh,